Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from Dallas, Texas, here on the eve of the MLG Fall Championships to bring you the finals, the last matchup in the MLG versus Pro League Invitational. I'm DJ Wheat.
And I'm Day 9. Now, many of you who've been following the MVP event know that it was originally scheduled to conclude on Monday, but Hurricane Sandy came in, and that, of course, has been screwing up all sorts of plans. So we figured, rather than just canceling the event at the finals and calling it a tie, we're doing it tonight, right here, with Sue versus Oz.
Absolutely a great matchup here for the finals. I'm sure many of you have been following along. If you haven't, guess what? Every single game that was played, we'll talk about it a little bit more, is out there in VOD form, whether it was casted by axeltoss and axslav or just cut right to VOD, it's available. And you know what? Let's give a shout to those guys. Because of the hurricane, they couldn't cast this this matchup. I'm honored that they allowed us to do it, Sean. But thank you, axeltoss and axslav, for all your amazing work throughout the MVP season.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree enough. Honestly, when MLG said, hey, do you think you could cast this match? I said, oh, Sue versus Oz? Oh, sure, absolutely. In case any of you have not been following the MVP throughout the entire run of it, let's talk a little bit about the format that brought the two players here today, because there's been a ton of hype about this finals. It has just been insane, the number of games played and the quality of games played. In this event, 24 of the top MLG players in the history of the MLG circuit go up against 24 of the best Pro League players. Those are the ex-Brood War professional gamers switching over to StarCraft 2. They played in a half-round robin, which means that each MLG player played each of the 24 Pro League players and vice versa. This allowed us to determine who were the top 8 MLG players, who were the top 8 Pro League players, and those were slammed into a single elimination bracket.
Yeah, this bracket then, of course, allowed them to play through either via the MLG players or the Pro League players to ultimately give us an MLG versus Pro League finals, and that's what you're going to be seeing tonight. Now, we're going to talk about each of the players here in just a moment, but you can already get a glimpse at what their road to the finals actually was. For Oz, he had to face Major to make it here, and for Sue, he had to face Sulky in an epic ZVZ that it did go the distance. But you could see there just by looking at it. You know, if you're looking at the MLG side, you see the names like Vibe, like Huck, you see Major, Thorzane, Naniwa. I mean, every single one of the names, including our finalist Oz, obviously very impressive. On the Pro League side, there's a lot of names there that you'd expect to see, and the same names that got people very excited for the Pro League debut back in Anaheim.
And, you know, if you look at Oz's path, I think a lot of people would say that it was tough, but not surprising that Oz made it through those players. Now, Sue, on the other hand, no one really expected to do this well. Sue was tied with 5 other players in 7th place. He had to battle there to barely get that 8th place position, and then he takes down Baby, who was in the top 3 in terms of the playoff ranking, and then we have him taking down Flash 4-3 in one of the closest series the event has seen yet, and then he goes up against Sulky, who at MLG Anaheim, everyone was saying he was the scariest Brood War player to switch over to StarCraft 2, or excuse me, the scariest StarCraft 2-wise of the Brood War players.
Right, absolutely. And he proved that, you know, time and time again. And he, you know, shows up here once again. Now, keep in mind, guys, what are they playing for? That $10,000 prize is up for grabs, and it is winner takes all. So that's a big deal going into a best of 7. A lot of weight there, because there is no, well, if I perform okay, at least I'm going to get that. No, $10,000 on the line, and there are your 2 competitors. It's Oz Fnatic versus Sue from SK Telecom.
It is true. There's something special about a winner-takes-everything format.
Yeah.
There's really no glory getting 2nd place in the Super Bowl. No one ever remembers that guy.
No.
And
only
here,
that they printed a lot of T-shirts that had the incorrect winner on it. So.
Let's go ahead and talk about our first player,
Oz,
who, in my eyes, is one of the scariest PvZs around. I do want to note something that I think is almost misleading about these numbers.
Drop it on me.
Here it comes, Marcus.
Okay, I'm ready.
Having went to school for math, I will tell you about the maths that I see.
Do it.
Now, in this tournament, Oz was an MLG player. And who did he play against? 24 of the Pro League players. Now, what this means is that he was playing against the best of the best. In general, people consider the Pro League players to be a step ahead of the MLG players. And even with that in mind, Oz was able to win 50% of his games, which is a remarkable amount of consistency. Now, his versus Zerg matchup, even though it is not his highest percentage-wise, I feel is his best in terms of his historic performances. He has crazy builds, gateway first expands, one base, 3-gate plays against a Zerg, really fast triple Nexus on one gate. Every single psychotic build that you think, no, I'm not going to do that because it's not very safe. Oz does it and makes it safe.
You know, the crazy thing about what you're saying, Sean, is that there's very few instances where I can see him. Like, I remember watching a game where he did it and it failed miserably. Versus the games where it's like, I can't believe he's doing this, and then it succeeds. And that's what I think is one of the most impressive things about Oz. He continues to pop himself and make himself relevant all the time in these competitions and some of these high-profile games that we're seeing on a consistent basis.
Interestingly, Oz, in the original round-robin play, went 2-0 versus his opponent today, Sue.
Yes.
I do think that Oz is going to be coming to the table with a bunch of crazy builds today, and I'm thrilled to see them at the front row seat.
Absolutely. And Oz is going to be your MLG representative from Team Fnatic. Are you ready to talk about Sue a little bit?
Oh, am I, Marcus?
Let's do it. Sue is the player who made it all the way through the Pro League, and all the way through the Pro League players. And let's go back. Let's rewind just a moment to what you said. The fact that coming into the playoffs, there was an enormous amount of tiebreaker games that had to be played.
Yeah.
Players were so very close. And, you know, a lot of times you squeak your way through. You're like, oh, that player, they squeaked their way through. Yeah, maybe they'll make it past 1 or 2 rounds. But as you showed, they made it all the way to the final. So I think if people were putting their money on Sue coming out of those round-robin games and just basing how he was going to do off of those group performances, they would not have done very well. But he surprised so many.
This is, I just think it's so interesting to consider. 36-12, again, you have to give a little bit of hesitation there because that is against the MLG players who are generally considered to be not at the Pro League level of play, and got, I would call it a modest 36-12, again, tying 5 other players. However, it's when he went up against the other Pro League players that he did so well. And what's almost unfair is that Sue, as a Zerg player, it's almost hard to identify what his unique style is, per se, due to the fact that most Zergs are playing in pretty much in sync with each other, all favoring the Broodlord Infestor tech as the late game. However, it's these little tiny micro decisions where we can really see his style shine forth, where his edge comes from. We're going to get a chance to see that today, hopefully, doing really clever things. Like, if you have 48 Zerglings go into someone's base, everyone knows the idea of splitting 24 into the natural and 24 into the main. But what if you have 6 Zerglings in the main? Most people keep them in one pack. Sue, we've seen time and time again, especially in Zerg vs. Zerg and Zerg vs. Protoss, splitting 3 off to take out workers because 3 hits from that pack will kill a worker. And now having these 2 packs move around just long enough to get an extra round of drones in. And he's able to accelerate that standard play.
And the question is are we going to get to see any of these, you know, things that can define Sue as a player going forward? We know what Oz is made of. We've seen so many games from Oz time and time again, and this is the new kid on the block. Even though you look at that APM, you look at his record, even some of his scores, and even how he did in the playoff matches versus his fellow Pro League players, that here's someone who wants to prove themselves, and what a better stage to do that.
Last thing I want to say before we get this match started, look at that average game length. For a player who does so many crazy speedling antics in the early game to have a 24-minute average game length. If you are going for fast Broodlords, you're going to have them by 14 or 15 minutes, and his games go on an additional 10 on average. I mean, that's just an incredible sign with his comfort with basic Zerg mechanics.
Which is funny because his opponent had, I think, an 11-11
An 11-11.
Yeah, an 11-11 average game length. So either way, this is a best of 7. It's for $10,000. This is the MVP Invitational. Are you ready for game number 1?
Yes. Yes, you are. Marcus,
I am too.
Let's hop to it.
Let's do it.
First map is going to be spawning on Daybreak, down in the bottom left corner. We have from Team SK Telecom, it's going to be Sue.
And in the northeast location, as the red Protoss from Fnatic, it's Oz.
Now, on this map, we've seen Oz do a number of very weird-looking expand, and then he goes one gate, and he instantly expands again down to this third location, using that Stalker to keep his opponent off his back.
And I mean, specifically off of Daybreak, too. You know, I think I've seen him do that pretty commonly. Of course, this also happens to be the map where we watched Oz open Nexus first versus another Protoss, only to lose it. But again, going back to what you were talking about those sort of unorthodox builds, Oz is full of them. He's got a lot that he can kind of pull out. So.
Already we have some weirdness with the fact that Oz did not scout with his first probe. I mean, almost always you end up doing this. This is basically a way of saying, you know what, I am just going to go Nexus first. It's very uncommon to do this and then to not go Nexus first. You're really looking to get, again, a faster standard play up.
Right, of course, without the probe, that also means that Su's going to be able to get down a hatchery with no problem, sitting on now his 15th drone. So, you know, typically you're going to see it with that first Overlord, or possibly even the second one, but it looks like he's going to go with what typically a Zerg would do in this situation, is to drop that pool anyway and expand off of that. Is it going to make that much of a difference? You know, I don't think so, but it is those little things. And on Daybreak, I think it kind of does. You get that hatch down, you're going to get that third down quicker, but this is the safer thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that, considering you're going up against Oz, who is cannon rushed very comfortably in MLGs all the freaking time, you don't want to take that risk. And Oz, again, kind of using his reputation to his advantage a little bit, going for the, oh my god, the Maid of Balls play. He is going for Nexus, followed by Gateway. Would not be surprised to see him skip the Forge entirely. He has built one gas geyser. Here's the second pylon incoming. This is a fantastic play, Marcus. This is just to exploit the fact that almost all Zergs are going pool, no gas, fast third.
Are you surprised that we're not seeing this more in sort of the current metagame of StarCraft 2?
I mean, it's taking a little while to get there. The fact is that Protosses are still finding ways to win in the mid and late game with the builds that they have done for ages. So why go for a potentially really risky opening when I can do something I know? That's the logic that a lot of people are going to be using, but I just love that Oz is always willing to do these styles of builds, and this is just...
the timing of it, I mean, it's great. Like, in conjunction with the Zerg that drops his pool and then his hatch, they're going to get those initial Zerglings out, but here they come. There's 4 at the front. The Zealot's out now, and again, it's just kind of the timing of it all.
Wow.
The Zerglings could have gone directly to the base, Sean. I feel like they probably could have done that. He's still going to pressure them because there's no cannon here.
This is exactly what makes Su so good, his willingness to do these kinds of maneuvers. He sees that it's an unorthodox build, and he's going to exploit it as best he can, but look at Oz having some excellent micro, trying to make sure he doesn't get surrounded, and there's the very fast +1. Oz is essentially saying, yep, no way you're going to be able to break in, and repels it effectively, but look at that. Su did manage to take down the initial Zealot. A little bit less map control for Oz, who now is forced to make a Stalker if he wants it. And in the meantime, Su has done a pretty dang standard triple hatch play. Yeah,
very, very standard. Just do want to point out this this probe over here was scouted by the Overlord. I think the Zerglings now coming back, definitely going to go for it, but he might be able to skirt out of there before he actually is taken out. Nope, he's going to go back. I thought maybe he'd go around to the third and drop a pylon, but those Zerglings actually still looking for that guy, so he doesn't know about it or thinks there's a second one. Stalker's going out now. And here come the gateways. Down we've got 3 inside the main, plus the 4 up front, +1's on its way, and Warp Gate is nearing completion.
Now, I want to talk about some basic timings in this matchup. Generally, the earliest that you will see a 4 Warp Gate play hit your base is sometime around 7:45. That's a very reasonable time for a player who's going for it pretty dang fast. But we're going to see Oz get it, geez, maybe even before 7 minutes. That's really an example of the pace that Oz is playing it. He needs to build that pylon fast, otherwise he's kind of throwing this time away. We see, Stalker manages to control the watchtower, and it looks like Su sees it. Oz needs to finish this pylon fast.
Yeah, he does, and there it's going to go down, or the Zergling's going to try to get it down. He's actually targeting that Overlord. And he's just going to go ahead and give that one up. He actually doesn't cancel. Meanwhile, there is an Overlord inside the base of Oz. Getting an idea is eventually going to go over and see those gateways. There's another cancellation on that pylon, but of course there's one. That's the true pylon going up to the north. Not going to fool Su, though. He immediately goes for it, and I think this is pretty much shut down at this point.
Yeah, Su knows what's up. Oh, it looks like an attempted warp-in is going to get canceled. I think that's actually a really good play by Oz to try to force those Zerglings off just a bit, because in the worst-case scenario, you just warp in back home in the main base. And Oz, not missing a beat, looks like he is gearing up to expand very swiftly, and he even has his Robo up to be able to get up that fast Immortal.
Yeah, he cares not that these Zerglings are out and about. The one Stalker going to head back home, use that cannon, but that means the Zergling's going to be able to come over here to this third, and he's going to need to get some sort of defense over there. His speed is about halfway done, Sean, so of course that's going to be kicking in very, very soon. Meanwhile, it's just Drone City over here for Su as he makes his way up to 53 now, actually just not too far ahead of his opponent. But there's a lot of Zerglings out on the field, too.
So. And it looks like Oz is going to try to run back to these minerals. It looks like he will make it, but he's going to be in a tough spot regardless. He's going to try to force field himself. A little bit of extra defense. Immortal coming down now. That's going to be a nice bit of added defense that Oz needs to take out the remainder of these Zerglings. Some great defense. And you know, the biggest result of Oz doing this aggression at the start was not so much to kill the opponent or to pick off drones. It was to delay the layer. And look at how late that layer is. I mean, it's going to be finishing close to 10 minutes. No way that Roach pressure will be able to arrive at the third base early. So Oz gets himself, again, a fast third. I mean, the only real benefit in that attack is that we did see two of those sentries go down for Oz. And here comes another Speedling attack, this time adding a few more. I think I saw 28 in production. And he's got some options here. There's no really entryway into the main, so he's going to have to deal with the cannon there. But coming in, flanking through the back, means all he's going to have to deal with is some force fields. Of course, we know how deadly that can be, and here he goes in for the rack. Oh, look at those perfect force fields, Marcus, and even a pylon at the backside. But man, those probes do get some extra. Some nice pickoffs coming up from Su, trying to force field to protect his probe line. And I think that yet again, we're going to see a little bit of an overall loss from Su. But I would say it's almost always worth it to try to kill off probes at the expense of a couple of Zerglings, but still hardly anything killed off by Su this game.
Yeah, I mean, 3 probes were killed, although it seemed like it was plenty more. I do believe I saw another sentry get taken out in there, but the Zerglings are going to continue to come out. In fact, he's gotten his first roaches out, but the Zerglings are coming aplenty. Already has his infestation pit down with the pathogen glands on its way, and just threw down his second Evo chamber. Again, that's coming a little bit later, but you know, he's gearing up for something here, Sean.
Su is doing, again, this really brilliant, subtle adjustment in tech. We have some Zerglings showing up. This is just to make Oz aware that there could be some all-in at any moment. But by skipping that second evolution chamber, Su was able to get up a faster pathogen glands, and with that extra funds, also getting up a faster 4th base. And no doubt we'll be getting a faster 5th base soon before he begins to turtle up and go for that Infestor Broodlord tech.
Yeah, in fact, grabbing that forward base as the 4th, I actually like that. I mean, the 5th base is, or excuse me, that far northwest base is the one that we're going to see, you know, more often than not. But I do like getting that middle one, establishing a defense there, and then working your way back to that one. Here we've got this small force, and again, we talked a little bit about it, but Su is a player that will try to maximize any sort of damage or any sort of advantage pushed to his way with as few units as possible. Sometimes that happens in the attack and offensively, but sometimes it happens defensively, which we saw quite a bit during the MVP.
Gosh, look at this. I mean, Su has just enough units to make sure that if Oz wants to move out, he's going to have to bring everything. And what was Su doing in the meantime? Ooh. He's been building up a lot of infestors, but of course Oz, per usual, with such a brilliant build, already getting +3, already getting the Colossus in range. Soon enough, he's going to be taking himself a 4th base. But right now, all that Su really needs to do is make sure he does not lose this center forward base, and he is just piling up on the infestor numbers. And he's not even getting any spine crawlers, which is a really bold move.
Yeah, in fact, it looks like, I mean, he decided to go Hive, I think, to make up for that layer, I guess, delay, as you kind of called it earlier. you know, getting that hive and putting a spire down a little bit earlier than I think that we normally see. But here we do have a two-pronged attack potentially coming out here, and it does seem like Su is very much aware of it, but wondering which exactly side should I try to go after. And it looks like he's chosen his route, this lower side, but the first Colossus are out.
Yeah, I mean, soon enough, I think Oz might very well just knock down the middle. Oz is trying to split up on both sides, and look at this, spreading pylons up to the north to not only defend from a counterattack, but to put on counterattacks of his own if he wants to. There we see that center pylon going to be taken out. And look at Su aggressively trying to re-go back to those watchtowers. This is what makes him such an excellent player. In the main base, tons of gates being added on, the usual mixture, couple of changelings spotting everything.
Now we've got Extended Thermal Lance completing now. +3 is about ready to done, and of course that is going to be a big sign for Oz to move in for some sort of attack. Putting pylons down just before the creep is about to spread. That's probably as further as these pylons are going to go, and the support is going to come. But I think there's a lot of options here. Yeah, there's no spine crawlers, but potentially he could attack it for a third, or just bring all these units out, and here comes the big attack.
It's spread out. It looks like the Zerglings are going to be able to get a good surround, but I don't even know if Su has even remotely enough units, and the answer is absolutely. He's going to take down that left flank of units. Corruptors popping out just in time. Su, with absolutely no spine crawlers involved in that fight, managed to get a big edge. All the Colossus fall down, and suddenly this is looking very dangerous for the Protoss.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's left with a ton of Stalkers. Is he going to attack the third? Not sure. A bunch of Zealots going to be warped in here. Now, the Infestors are pretty much starved of energy now. They used everything, but 60-plus Zerglings came out, and now you've got the first Broodlords being morphed in. +2 a melee attack is on its way as well, and he's just going to go in again. Easily going to disuse of that Colossus. It goes down, and the remaining energy spent on those infested Terrans. Again, the Protoss will be able to blink out of there, but still going to take some damage on the retreat.
Jeez, I mean, the efficiency that those infested Terrans can just rip apart absolutely all those units is just astounding. I mean, Su actually used almost no fungal growths in that attack, just enough to make sure his Zerglings could surround, and then he followed it up with the infested Terran play. And now we see, looks like Oz does not want to let that Broodlord count get up high at all. He is really aggressive right now, Marcus.
Yeah, he is. And you know what, the Broodlords, they morphed in a very aggressive position as well, not really back. And he is going to push Oz back a little bit further. Here come the 4 more that were morphing in the back. So maybe that was more or less a bait tactic here, because he has fended off this attack. Like, there's not much left behind it. I can't imagine that Oz really believes he's going to be able to do something versus the, what, now almost 6 Broodlords, 7, 8 that we're going to have out here momentarily. And the moment the fungals hit, it's going to be game over.
Look at this.
Might not even matter. The Zergling.
And there's,
there it is.
GG. It looks like Oz tried to do the huge push at the end, but just couldn't quite take out that insane number of infested Terrans. I mean, that's just crazy how many of those Su threw out.
That initial battle was, you know, just quite perfect for Su as well. A great surround. The force fields, although they were plenty, they didn't really have that much of an effect on the battle. I mean, the infested Terrans lobbed directly over it. The Zerglings came in from behind, and the Corruptors kind of that came in after the battle, a little bit late to the party. They pretty much cleared all the Colossus out. So,
you know, we were talking before about the fact that pretty much all Zergs are going to be going for Infestor Broodlord in some way, shape, or form. And how Protoss has been responding, they're trying to attack right at 16 minutes. Broodlords are, on average, going to be popping out at 17. So I'll hit them right during the midst of that transition before the Broodlords get powered up. That's exactly what Oz was trying to do there. Your average Zerg says, oh my gosh, how do I have enough defense to be able to hold this off without my Broodlords? But interestingly, Su was almost like, well, great, I'm going to have the perfect composition to crush that push. And the Broodlords, I'm not even really going to have that much resources for. I mean, if you looked at the way Su was morphing into Broodlords, it was like 2. And another 2. And another 2. Most Zerg players try to save up to do 10, 12 all at once. Not Su. He got way more Infestors and over 100 Zerglings, and emphasized the Zerglings and tried to force the Protoss to split himself up even slightly, and that's where Su was able to take the advantage in that battle.
Su takes game number 1. It's a best of 7 for the MVP Invitational Finals. $10,000 on the line. We'll be back with game 2 after this.